Hey, how's it going? Coach D here from All Out Athletes. And we're back once again with the Last Dance Baseball Tournament podcast. We're just going to keep dropping podcasts Monday and Wednesday night throughout the whole tournament to keep people updated and to get the philosophies of these coaches. Every coach has something great to share with athletes in any sport around the world, no matter what sport it is. So we're here to promote the tournament and to pick the brain of the coaches to find out what do they know that can help all coaches and all athletes in all different sports. And with me today is another coach who's in the tournament. He's a coach from Somerville High School, the varsity boys baseball coach. But back in 1995, his baseball career, who started over at Edison High, where he was in the Group 4 finals. From there, later on, he got his first coaching job over at J.F. Kennedy in Island as a freshman coach. He became the assistant varsity coach there, where they won the Group 3 title. From there, he coached over at Dunellen for a few years. And as I mentioned, over in Somerville now, we're in 2018. They won the North Jersey 2 Group 3 championship. And so here he is with us today. And if I got anything wrong, just correct me when you come on. And here he is with us today, the Courier News 2018 Coach of the Year, Coach Chris Banos. Chris, how's it going?
Good. How are you, Coach D? Thanks for having me on.
Good, good. So
I do have to say we were the Group 3 state champions. We won the whole thing.
Oh, for Somerville, you won the whole
thing?
thing?
Yep. We beat Allentown 3-2.
All right. Wasn't like bases loaded and your pitcher struck out, like that must have been.
It struck out the side, yeah.
Yeah, struck out the side. Wow, that's. I can't imagine coach being in that position because it's exciting for the fans because even fans are sitting on their hands. The coaches must be going nuts.
Oh yeah.
That's what makes it great when you do win. That's what makes it exciting.
Absolutely.
So Chris, before we jump into the Last Dance, I got to ask you a few things because some of the things that I read, there's championship belts, warrior helmets, some of the things you guys do over there. What is all this stuff about?
Well, it was something that we started, I believe it was my second year there, and my assistant coach, Steve DiCiolio, said, why don't we try something sort of like what the colleges do? So we kind of did like a little something for the player of the game. The kids vote on it. We've had a couple different things over the years, but now we've sort of settled on the bow because we kind of want our philosophy of the kids to sort of be like hunters out there, whether it's at the plate, in the field, just kind of going out and hunting and doing that kind of stuff. So we decided that we're just going to stick with the bow, and that kind of is sort of like our little thing.
That's what you're doing now. So you got rid of the warrior helmet.
Well, the warrior, we had the warrior helmet. I think that was in 17, just to kind of change things up a little bit. But we've kind of just for the last couple of years we've stuck with the bow.
So can you explain a little bit more about how that works? You don't have to get into too much detail, but at least other coaches can see certain things that you do that gets athletes.
Right. So basically what happens is after the game, the kids vote on who they thought was the player of the game. The player from the player of the game from the previous game keeps the belt or the bow with them until the next win. And then we sort of pose them in a picture. We've had pictures all over the place, in the woods, on fences, dugouts. Like we just try and get as creative as possible. And then we sort of post it on Twitter, kind of give the kids a little bit of recognition. The thing I also like is that, a lot of times some of the kids would be like, no, I shouldn't get it. This kid had a better game than I did. And that happened a lot in 2018. And it's probably one of the reasons why we won the state championship. But it's sort of just a little bit of a recognition to kind of put the kids, give them something to feel cool about and stuff like that.
Here at All Out Athletes, one of the things we talk about is, can you celebrate another teammate's success, right? I mean, that's what a team is, to go out of their way to celebrate somebody else's success. And you're actually teaching that, right? Without saying that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, usually the better teams kind of are the more selfless teams. So when you find more kids trying to give it up, yeah, I think you'll find you'll have a closer team, and that usually kind of leads to winning and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I want a lot of coaches to understand that it does mean a lot more coming from the teammates than it does coming from the coach sometimes.
Oh yeah,
right, coach. Especially if you're trying to tell them something and they're not listening, but then 3 other players are saying the same thing you are. Now it makes for a different dynamic. Plus, you're teaching them to be a fan of each other, right? So they're being a fan of each other's game and noticing how good each other is. They're like that. Now you talk about empowering athletes.
right.
Great thing, and I think that's a great thing for all coaches to use. So
I mean, just to kind of piggyback on, I think in the 5 years we've been doing it, I want to say maybe a handful of times we as the coaches sort of, not that we didn't disagree, but we thought somebody else should get it. So I mean, we've won close to 60 games. So you're talking five or six times we've ever disagreed. So the kids are usually pretty honest when they do it too, and I think that kind of helps, as you said. It sort of gives them a little bit of empowerment.
So just one more question about this, and maybe it's a 2-part question, is that, so number one is, if any coach wants to do something like this, you have to get them to buy in, right? To get athletes to buy in, there's a corny factor. Where it's like, it's a little corny and things like that. So how do you get them to buy into something like that? How does that work? How does this start? If a coach wanted to start doing this, how does that work?
Like when we first started, my assistant coach just sort of said, "Hey, I got this good idea." And I'm like, listen, if you think it's going to help us win, let's do it. And we just basically told the team, and the kids thought it was pretty cool, especially the fact that they were going to get their picture on Twitter. Yeah, they all have social media accounts and stuff like that. They want the retweets and things like that. But like I just think that we didn't really necessarily have to sell it. I think it just became something that sort of it's kind of our thing. It's kind of like what we do. The expectation is there that hey, we want the kid wants to get the bow, or when we did the belt, or as you said, the Viking helmet a couple of years ago. But I think once like you get your main guys to buy in, then everybody buys in after that.
Right, and I'm telling other coaches, doesn't have to be a bow. It could be something else. I know a football coach from Montclair State. He would give, at the end of practice, he would give out a sticker, just a sticker,
right,
and put it on the helmet, just a sticker, knowing that nobody else was getting this except for that one. It's just that special thing that they're getting something that nobody else is getting. I would say, right, that's probably the biggest buy-in factor right there.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really even have to, like, obviously we're the pioneers, so there's nothing to really do with, like, the belt and the Viking helmet. I mean, I guess pioneers would hunt, but, it really has nothing to do with the logo, but there are cool logos out there. You could do stuff. I've seen people do T-shirts and even do it game by game. You hear a lot of these college coaches talk, and they do that kind of stuff. I think it just sort of helps to build a culture, and we sort of pride ourselves on our culture. And, the bow is certainly one of the bigger parts of that.
Yeah. Well, I think you're doing a great job over there with that, of how to bring a team together. And that's one of the best ways, is when you can get them, as we said, it's up to them to celebrate each other. And
right.
That's a great thing. All right, Chris, thanks for that. I think that was really good to share for athletes and coaches, that they could really learn a lot from that. But now let's jump into the Last Dance baseball tournament. So we know 3 guys put it together. It was the idea of Mike Murray, the AD from St. Joe's, John Kroger, who's a recruiter for Major League Baseball, and Brian Chapman, who's the head coach over at Milburn. So what do you think about this? What do you think about the safety of it? How do you feel? I'm sure you're really excited. Every coach can tell you, oh, it's great, because everything was done and now everything's resurrecting again, and it's like, wow, the kids, where they thought everything was dead, and now everything's coming back to life. So,
sorry, good.
And your safety concerns and what you know about the tournament so far.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the tournament goes, I think it's a really cool opportunity for the for the kids to sort of, as we said, the last dance, sort of play together, sort of one last time. We had 6 seniors. 4 of them are going to play. Two kind of had conflicts that they weren't able to play. But, it's a cool little thing. The kids seem to be pretty excited about it. If they weren't, I wouldn't have done it. But I think, it's like that one last opportunity sort of, we didn't even get to play a game. We sort of got shut down the day of our first scrimmage, so we didn't even get to do that. So we basically were only able to practice. And, it was unfortunate because our kids, I think, in the off season worked the hardest, I think, in the time that I've been here, especially in the weight room. So I was really looking forward to seeing sort of what they were going to do. On the other side, as far as safety things, I think the kids are pretty used to kind of what's going on. They've been practicing with their travel teams and stuff like that. So they kind of have an idea as to, just be smart, try to avoid touching your mouth and your nose, your eyes, stuff like that. In baseball, it's really hard, especially the spitting and stuff like that. The pitchers like to, go to their mouth a lot. But I think the kids sort of understand that they're going to have to make a lot of adjustments. But I think everything should be fine. As long as the kids don't do anything crazy, everyone's sort of more so self-conscious about everything. So I think it's going to be okay.
I think you bring up a great point, because imagine if you have a habit, you lick your fingers, you're doing all this in a sport, and now all of a sudden that's taken away. Well, that could be a huge distraction for you if you're not training. That sounds crazy.
Right now,
be a huge distraction if you got to constantly focus on not licking your fingers, right? And in any sport, you got to have focus in one direction. If your focus is going in all different directions, I think I think that's a great point. That has not been brought up on this podcast yet, but yeah.
Especially in baseball, like baseball players are so routine driven. For some reason, like we do some of the craziest stuff, and especially me, I used to do all types of crazy. I wish I didn't, but I did.
Can you name one? Can you name one thing you did?
Whenever I would come to bed, I would do literally the same exact thing. From when I was ready to get on deck, I had to do the same thing when I got up. And if I didn't do it, or it was kind of messed up, I didn't have like good positive thoughts, and usually didn't end well. I wish I was more, on the mental side of the game back then than I am now. I think I could have been a lot better baseball player, but it was really, I guess, it wasn't really a thing back there. If it was kind of more of in its infancy. But baseball players, they're just routine driven, right? So pitcher catch the ball, go to their mouth, sometimes it's just subconscious. They don't even know they're doing it. So hopefully it doesn't affect them. But listen, if you want to play, you're going to have to figure it out.
We do a podcast on Thursday nights at 8 p.m. And we talk about, I have a professor in sports psychology come on. We talk about how to think like a champion. You're talking about the mental skills when you were a kid. And now it's more popular. Because if you don't know how to think like a champion, you'll never play like one.
Right.
That's the thing you're talking about. Like, you were a little bit more superstitious back then. And you thought it was this, it was that. So you're talking about, in the end, a lot of times that stuff doesn't matter.
It does. It just makes you feel comfortable.
Right. Because the same player who's batting 200 is doing the same routine when he was batting 280.
Right.
So it doesn't really, but it makes you feel comfortable. It's all in your mind. It makes you feel comfortable.
So I'm just hoping at the end of the day, it's really a small portion of the game, I think. If nothing else, I'm assuming nothing's really else is going to affect the game other than, like gum, sunflower seeds, sort of spitting, that kind of stuff. But it's still going to be baseball. They haven't really put the restrictions on that some of the other states, with the catchers being 6 feet behind the batter. And that just changes the game. Like New Jersey really, I think, did a pretty decent job of not changing the game. It's just more being prepared. And, if we have to put 10 things of hand sanitizer and sprays or whatever we got to do, so we can play.
So, Coach, I want to ask you, when you first started coaching, every coach is so gung-ho and we're going to be the best coach in the world. And it's funny because a lot of coaches are so into it. And then you get there sometimes and you find out the athletes aren't as into it as you are. Right? Wait a second. And we talk about how they get to do this And sometimes they act like they have to do it, but they get to be here. And a lot of coaches, every training session, they act that way all the time. And we're talking now that the excitement that the athletes have right now for the Last Dance baseball tournament is the excitement you probably wanted every training session, every weight room session, every game, every competition. And now you have it, right? Because something's been taken away and now it's being given back to them. And now we get excited. And there was a father who said, if I knew that last year was going to be one of the last seasons, because his athlete's a senior this year, was going to be just about the last season of my child playing, I would have been at more games. And I wonder how many athletes come back to you, Coach, and always say, if I would have worked a little bit harder, I could have been All-American. I could have went to that college I wanted to go to. So my question to you is, how do you ignite that athlete? How do you get them psyched up when they're psyched out? How do you get them into it when they feel out of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's sort of like the $1 million question, right? If there's really, it's sort of just based on the player. I think you got to kind of, practices and stuff like that. You just got to make them as competitive as possible and let that competitiveness come out. And, if you don't have those kind of kids, you're probably not going to win anyway. So for us, we try and get the kids to sort of compete as much as possible. You always try and tell the kids, listen, hey, you got to play like it's your last game. And they're always like, yeah, well, I have a doubleheader tomorrow. Like, what's the big deal? But I think, you see something like this, like the father saying, I wish I would have went to more games. Maybe now, like, the kids realize that, listen, baseball can be taken away from them at any point. It doesn't even have anything to do with them. Right? The kids didn't do a single thing. Like, they didn't get in trouble in school. They didn't get hurt because they slid wrong or something like that. This was just something that was completely out of their control. And they just, but now hopefully this is something that we can use and be like, hey, listen, you literally never know when your last game is going to be, because we don't even know if we're going to play next year either. If you think about it, right? They're talking about the second wave and, is football going to be allowed to play? Are they going to, what are they going to do with the indoor sports like basketball and wrestling and things like that? So, who knows when's the next time we're going to be powerful high school. So I think, that's sort of like the $1 million. How do you get the kids? I think, you just got to keep pushing them and pushing them and pushing them and pushing them until they either conform or somebody else is going to pass them by.
I think, we talk about how do you create that all-out athlete, which is really what we're talking about, right? I think the very first step is you have to be an all-out coach. You got to be all in on what's going on. That athlete has to know that it's not so much about do it because I said so, because a lot of us, when we start out coaching, we seem to start that way, right? And then we learn, right, as you're going forward, you're getting all the athletes together, they're rooting for each other, they're sharing in each other's successes, and that's what So Coach, you get that one kid on. I think a lot of coaches think that, well, they're either into it or they're not. Yeah, but if you put them around other athletes who are into it, it ignites them a little bit more, especially as a coach when they start getting results for their training. Now they start going a little bit harder, get a little bit more into it. And when you can create that atmosphere, but number one, as a coach, you got to be all in on how to ignite that. And as you're doing, Coach, I think it's a great thing that, right, you're empowering the athletes to make those decisions where they feel ownership, right? They're feeling ownership of what's going on. And I think that's a great way, because now they're responsible for each other instead of just being responsible to you.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the biggest thing I've learned. I still have a lot to work on with that. I used to, when I first started coaching, I sort of, not that I didn't trust anyone, but I figured, like, this is my team. I want to make sure, and I definitely wasn't as good a coach as I could be because of that. And sort of now as time got on, you get a little older, you get a little wiser, but I still have a lot to improve on with that as well. For my own personal self, I like to try and, get better with that each year. And, especially with my coaches, the seniors or the players. But I think, the teams that have that are your more successful teams.
And athletes, and they're going to try and make it to where you're not traveling all over the state.
That's what they're telling us.
As best as they possibly can to get you to play teams right, near you in your team.
Yeah, as best they can.
Right. So we know the word "The Last Dance." We know where it came from, right? So you talked to Murray. It came from Michael Jordan's It was Michael Jordan's last dance in 1998. They did a documentary of Michael Jordan's championships of all those years. Did you catch that at all, Coach?
No, you know what? I haven't had a chance to watch. I've really not watched much TV. It's amazing how little TV I watch, unless it's a baseball game or a football game or sort of college basketball. So I haven't watched it. I plan on doing it, but I just haven't seen it. I've read stuff about it. I heard it was really good, but
it comes down to the things we talk about, right? The two most important things: energy and focus.
Right.
His energy and focus was unbelievable. You don't smile on his court during practice. That doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
So, but he would train so hard during practice, over and over and over and over, so hard that he knew when he walked away, he said, "I got this."
Yeah. You know what? And for a guy like Phil Jackson, when your best player works the hardest, it's pretty easy to be a coach. Obviously he's the best player probably ever. If he's not, you could say he's the second. LeBron's better. Either way, it doesn't matter. He's there. Two of our best years we had here in 16 and 18, our best player, was like that. They controlled everything. They worked hard, and then they didn't accept when the other people didn't work hard. So that helps a coach so much.
Again, if it comes from the players,
it's
a lot more important many times if it comes from the players as opposed to coming from the coach.
Yeah, I was really excited because we've had every year we've been like that pretty much. This year we had a guy who's gonna, who was really like that. I was really happy, looking forward to seeing what he was gonna do. Unfortunately, obviously, as we know, it didn't happen. But we've been really lucky here that every year we've had at least one person who made sure that everybody was on the correct page. And when like you said, when it doesn't come from us, it means a lot more when it comes from the players than it comes from us. They expect us to yell at them. They expect us to tell them they're doing something wrong. But when their teammate does it and someone they look up to or their friend tells them, then it carries a lot of weight.
Yeah, that's a great point. They expect you.
Listen, no matter what, whether the coach yells a lot or they yell a little, they expect that they're going to get some sort of criticism from their coaches. It's kind of in the title of the name, right? It's coaching is sort of critiquing. But we've had some really good guys over the years that have been able to take care of that for us, and that really helps a lot.
Yeah, you bring up some good points. How excited are you when you come to a practice, you got that one all-out athlete? I mean, athletes don't realize how much that ignites the fire in the coach. The coaches are already coming, and they know for some athletes they're going to have to put in a lot of work to get them focused, to get them energized. But they get even more excited about it when you have that one player. You can enjoy coaching a lot more.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it's like anything else, right? If someone doesn't want to do anything, it's really hard to coach them. But we've come across very few people. I mean, even in my coaching career, that I've sort of been like that. So I've been pretty blessed that I haven't really come across just like, you got that like lost soul kind of like, they just don't want to do anything. Luckily our culture is sort of taking care of that, where we've never had anybody like that. And if there was or teetering, the kids would get them right back going in the proper direction.
And the coaches, we always ask ourselves, why are they here?
Yeah.
They came out, they tried out for a team knowing this guy's going to come and critique everything they're doing, and they don't want to accept, right? What's the number one thing you want, Coach? Accept feedback and put it into action immediately.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Yeah.
They don't, first of all, they don't want to accept feedback. I'm not saying all athletes, I'm saying those athletes who don't want to. Then
right.
Why are you here? I don't understand. They love playing, but are they driven to get better? Those are really two different things, but they know what they're getting. It's like, Coach, just let us play. Can't we just play? Right? That's on their minds. Yeah. Just let us play.
Yeah.
So, Coach, you have any last words before we get to the last dance? Anything you're going to say, I wanted to say that, I should have said that, or?
No, just thank you for having me on. I enjoyed it. You guys, I think I told you before we came on, you're my first podcast. So I guess I'm no longer a newbie anymore. But I really appreciate you, sort of helping out, to get the name out for the tournament. I've seen some of the past people you've had on, all good coaches, all great guys. So, just want to wish you good luck with this. And, for all the people out there, Coach D is a good guy. You can see his passion and stuff like that. So thank you for having me on.
Thanks a lot for saying that, Coach. I really appreciate that. And we'd love to have you back on when the tournament starts. You want to?
Sure, of course.
And like I told the other coaches, don't worry. If you make that pitching change that didn't work out, we're not going to talk about it. That's not why we're here. We're here to focus on the good things that are happening in sports. Because if you just watch on TV some sports and the money the athletes are getting paid, people really forget what sports is supposed to be about. Mm-hmm. And it's supposed to be about what Coach Chris Banos is talking about the athletes coming together for this beautiful game called baseball. Mm-hmm. And sharing in each other's successes, because in 20 years, Coach, they're not going to remember all the losses. They're going to remember the time that they had together.
Right.
And this is going to be the most memorable year that they're probably ever going to have.
Yeah, for better or worse, right? This is the year.
Right, this is it. So thanks a lot, Coach, for coming on. And one last thing to the athletes. When the game starts, no matter what happens, you lose the game, you strike out, you error, no matter what it is, if you're all in on your focus, you're all in when the coach is talking, you're all in on your energy, then and only then can the team rely on you to go all out. Thank you, Coach Chris. We'll see you at some of the games. And everybody come on out. I mean, I think by then you're going to be able to have 500 people. Wear your mask, be a safety, bring your own sanitizer, bring your wipes. Do everything you can if you're coming out to the games to make it as safe as possible. We'll see everybody next time at in the Last Dance Baseball Tournament podcast. Thanks, Coach.
All right, thank you.
Hey, Coach D here. On our next Last Dance Baseball podcast this Friday, 8 p.m., we're going to have a high school coach who has 425 career wins from Eastern Regional High School, Coach Rob Chris. And he's going to discuss that there is no land of good enough, that great athletes are never satisfied. There's always another mountain to climb. So join us on Friday. That we're sick of getting average results over and over again, but our training stays here. We want to be up here. Everything we want the energy, intensity. We want to go all out. But then when I watch athletes train and there's no coach around, their actions are down here.
How many of you were into school last year and they look at me like I'm an idiot? What do you mean? In and into, it's the same thing. No, it isn't. In and into are not the same thing. Are you in a job or into a job? In a relationship or into a relationship? Are you in a sport or into a sport?
No one says, I can't wait to get there so I can be an average athlete and win the average award.
Don't be upset when you're not a. The biggest mistake you can make is when you put in C effort and you expect A results.
Players that are better than you, but they don't train as hard as you do. Those are the players. That's the win you want. The win that nobody expects you to win. See you Thursday, 8 p.m.